So you found our podcast. We are Mind Beyond the Mission. This is a podcast about veterans and their families, and specifically mental health. What goes on in our lives, what goes on in our heads. We're not talking to you as doctors or professionals. We're talking to you about living with it and what it's like. Brian McKenna, 19 years in the Canadian Forces. I'm joined by my partner, Laryssa Lamrock.
Veteran family member. I'm a proud military brat. My husband served in the military, proud military mom. And we're really excited about this podcast to delve into issues that are important to the veteran and family community.
So join us as we talk about mental health from the perspective of veterans and their families.
Here we are with another episode of Mind Beyond the Mission podcast. Thanks for joining us for this episode today. There's a couple different things about this particular episode. One is my new baritone voice that I'm trying out. I'm just coming off of a cold. But something else is that Brian is currently away. Brian McKenna is normally my partner in crime and co-host. So we are really excited to have a guest co-host to bring the veteran perspective to today's conversation. So I'm excited to introduce Andrew Gough. Andrew Gough is a Canadian Armed Forces veteran and medically retired police officer. He's a passionate advocate for the mental health of veterans and first responders and has taken his diagnosis of PTSD as a driving force to create Veterans and Everyday Heroes, a not-for-profit organization. VA focuses on providing wellness initiatives for veterans and emergency responders, with the goal of reducing the stigma associated with mental health. He is also a newly appointed chaplain for Boots on the Ground. Andrew has received numerous awards for his advocacy work, which includes public speaking, awareness campaigns, fundraising, and just support to the community. He's also received the Sacrifice Medal for injuries sustained by a hostile action while deployed in Tripoli, Libya during Operation Loeb in 2014, which in itself, Andrew, there's so much that we could chat with you about today. I think a lot of people should learn a little bit more about that. So, Andrew, you have been a great supporter and a lot of engagement with Atlas. So some folks might remember you from a podcast that actually you did with us. You were guests on the podcast with your lovely wife, Elizabeth, talking about the experience of reserves and reservist families. You were recently a panelist with us at the Family Summit talking about how parenting with PTSI. I remember I think your first engagement with us back in the day was to talk about service animals. You came to speak to the staff at Atlas about that with your buddy Riggs there, just to name a few things. So we just thought that you would be the perfect person to be our first guest co-host for Mind Beyond the Mission today.
Beyond excited and incredibly honored to be on that list of people that you would invite to be here and to share this experience with you, and especially who we have as a guest today, such a dear friend of mine. So I'm really excited to dig into our topic today and have some great conversation.
Yeah, me too. This is going to be a great conversation. And as you and I were chatting, Andrew, and I approached you and invited you to be co-host, we were kind of pondering what type of topic we would want to explore. And our guest came to mind for both of us right away. And kind of where we landed on is our conversation today will be a little bit about turning pain into purpose. I think it's something that both you and Emily kind of share in common, and I admire. And I've said before, like I just can only imagine the ripple effect that each of you has had in your work. So I think I'm going to ask you a question first. We're going to introduce Emily in a second. Emily Zufelt is a first responder. And so wanted just to talk to you a little bit about the link. You are a veteran. You are a medically retired police officer. So you kind of have a foot in both camps, if I can say. So seeing as how Emily is not specifically a veteran or veteran family or have connection in the military, but having that first responder experience, kind of what do you see the link of experiences between first responders and military members and veterans?
Yeah, having done both concurrently for pretty much the exact same length of time. I started as a private soldier. At the same time, I started as a cadet with my police service. And, having had my foot in both worlds and growing up with my foot in both worlds and having had the opportunity to be on operation, more so on the operation side of things, having been a reserve soldier, not a regular first soldier, and doing it every day, but getting ready, for a move or a mission while so deployed had the exact same feeling as, putting on my duty belt for the day and going on to the streets of my city. What we experience as first responders, it's a daily occurrence for us. And to be able to translate that into the veteran world while so deployed, or if you're position, such as, military police members, medics, look at like SARTECs, they are out there also experiencing much of what our first responders are experiencing on a daily basis due to the duties that they must accomplish. Mm. So a first responder lens is definitely, yes, it's a parallel line, but there are a lot of connections, a lot of string of connections to the experiences. Because when we talk about trauma, it should never be a measure of what happened, but how we experienced it. So as a first responder, there is that very direct correlation between our trauma and as a first responder and that which one might experience as a soldier.
Yeah, and it's something that in preparation for this, we talked about that a little bit, and I'll try not to be vulgar, but we did kind of talk about the bucket of poo, I guess I'll just call it that. Yes. From my observation, never having served, but observing people who have served in uniform, what they experience is beyond what most people have to on a daily occurrence or a regular occurrence. And I think the experiences of trauma, maybe not how you got there, is kind of a commonality. And I have provided support to both military veteran families and first responder families. And really, when a family member is talking to me about how worried they are about their loved one who's experienced trauma and maybe PTSD specifically, the stories are very similar and they have the same care and concern and love. I
think it's important to acknowledge as well that, Atlas, serves members of the RCMP.
Yes.
Which so many of them are doing frontline police work.
Absolutely.
So,
well, let's get our guest in here then. Emily Zufelt is a passionate and fierce advocate for first responders, military personnel, and veterans. As the creator and host of the globally acclaimed mental health podcast, What's Your 20, Emily has dedicated herself to educating and speaking out about PTSD and promoting post-traumatic growth. Her ability to connect with diverse audiences and convey impactful messages is a passion where she does really thrive. Her extensive experience began in public education with Rape Crisis Center and over 20 years as a police dispatcher, Emily. In addition to her professional roles, Emily is a trauma-informed certified trauma and resiliency coach. So she's leveraging her deep knowledge of trauma to empower individuals and to promote healing, which is one of the things that I just intrigued me and I wanted to chat more about her with. Her commitment to mental health advocacy is evident in her work, where she uses her platform to educate, inspire, and promote the message of hope, resilience, and never giving up. She's also the Director of Communications for Concussion Legacy Foundation Canada. And we will likely put a link to Emily's podcast, What's Your 20, in our description or links with the podcast. So just welcome, Emily.
Thank you so much, Laryssa, for having me. And Andrew, it's lovely to see you this morning. And when I heard your bio, Laryssa, for Andrew, I wanted to say, and I want to add my friend. He's my friend. So Andrew already put that one in there. But thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're excited. Why do you do what you do, Emily? You are the host of a podcast. I see you have a couple of social media channels. You do advocacy to create awareness for mental health, trauma, post-traumatic growth. One of the things that I'd mentioned to you that I appreciated is that through those channels and your advocacy, you offer encouragement to people. You hold them accountable too, which I think is kind of cool. And you just kind of say it like it is. Why do you choose to do what you do?
Because I was in the ditch myself. I was so down in that I didn't know how to get out. I spent a period of my life, 8 months to be exact, to be in bed, losing loss of my limbs, losing feeling in my face and my hands. And I went through the gamut of what was going on with me. Did I have ALS, MS, all these things? When in fact, it was none of the above. It was all somatic from trauma. Mm-hmm. So I am a very somatic individual. And when anxiety and depression gets me at such a level, my body breaks down. And that's exactly what trauma is in the body. When you have chronic pain, you have chronic stress turns into disease. It turns into cancer, which I'm also a cancer survivor. And ironically enough, the cancer was in my throat. And if that wasn't the universe saying, speak, speak. And I've held my tongue for so long and I hid my truth for so long. And the truth was I was severely unwell with PTSD, depression, and anxiety. But you wouldn't have ever known because I was a rock star at work. And I won't ever say that I'm good at anything except my job. And I could do it blindfolded on my head spinning. And I would rather go to work and continue to put myself at risk than to come off of work and get well because I feared everything that I was going to lose. So I decided a whole bunch of catalysts took place, and those catalysts allowed me to get myself out of the ditch. And that's what it was right there, was that if I felt this way, and the catalyst, Andrew being one of them, it was a video that Andrew did with the London Police Service, was about 4 or 5 years ago, Andrew, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was just coming out of the height of my injury. And I saw this stranger on a video talking about suicidal ideation, everything that he felt. And I felt like I had found a kindred spirit, that they not only knew exactly what I was going through, but he could understand it on a level that I couldn't explain it. And he was explaining it. And not only that, he was explaining it out loud on video to be replayed over and over again. And I remember looking at this video and saying, "Are you kidding me? You're saying that out loud. What are you doing?" But I'm so glad he did. And that right there, that catalyst of shared experience and that aha, me too, there, I knew there were others out there. And if Andrew could do that for me, if I was honest about what I was going through and feeling, and if I can find a way to get out of this, there's got to be others out there that feel this way too. And there is a way out. I didn't think there was. My way out was suicide. That was originally my way out. And so thankfully I had an anchor, and my anchor was my son. He was and is still my why. But today I'm able to say that my why is also myself. So I didn't have it enough for myself to save myself back then. I had enough for my son to save myself. Now I'm enough to stay here, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to feel that I want to be here.
I remember when you reached out to me, Emily, I know exactly where I was, and I remember most of what you said. So we connected. I was at the police college as an instructor, and you had reached out to me asking if I would consider a phone call. It was so polite and almost written in a tone where I felt like you didn't think I would reach back out, like you didn't deserve a response almost.
That's true.
And I will say that that's what made me do it, because there was almost as if I could feel something in that needed to be answered. I was on my lunch, and I was sitting in the lunchroom, and we connected, and you had asked me very humbly if I would be a guest on this podcast, this project that you were creating. And I'm not sure there was much hesitation. It was just an immediate yes. And how blown away you were by that someone would even consider that and talk to you. And then you come all the way from your hometown, which is 7 hours away, rent a place to stay, rent a studio to kick off this vision of yours, which ended up being some of your therapy. And, I had just come out of the field and met you still in uniform, probably 3 days less a shower. And, when we recorded this 2-part podcast that, still to this day, I hear people's opinion on it and how much the information that we were speaking about, because both of us were very raw in the pursuit of where we currently are with our own endeavors, that it has helped them rearrange their perspective on mental health injuries and post-traumatic growth and, acceptance of our follies and our faults, and having the ability to climb out of that which injured us. And if I have never thanked you for that opportunity, I do so now. Thank you for reaching out and including me in what you are creating. You're tenacious. You stand out in a crowd, and I will always support you, and I will always wish great things for what you're 20 and everything that you touch.
Well, That's mind blowing. And I take that moment and I remember exactly where I was when I asked. And I knew you had to be the first guest on the show without fail. I said, this has to be the man or the person that has to be on the show. And this was, I think, April timeline. We were still in the spring and my show was not started in any way. And I think I may have started the social media pages, but I did not get the podcast up and running until November. And then I called you again in November and said, I'm ready. Yep. So it took months to get there and you still stood by your word. And yes, we had a couple hours in the studio. We said some of the most raw, real things, but it was after the microphone shut off and we went outside and we were saying our goodbyes and we must have stood outside in the driveway for another hour and a half. And
wow. Just you with a broken leg.
Yeah, I had a broken ankle. My God, you're right. I did have a broken ankle. I fell down the stairs. And anyway, we stood outside and there was so much realness in that conversation. There was so much healing in that. So that right there with that healing, trying to reach out and let others know that they are exactly where they should be. They're feeling it for a reason and that they can move forward. There is a way out. And if you don't know the way, it's okay. Nobody does in the beginning, but just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And if I felt this way and you felt this way, just imagine how many other people out there are feeling this way who feel stuck in the dark and don't have a clue how to get out of it. There are tons of us. And if it just takes a conversation to say you are normal, you're completely normal. So this catalyst turned into being very cathartic and healing for myself. Like Andrew said, it became part of my healing process.
Yeah, that was going to be actually something I wanted to ask you. And just as the two of you were talking about this, like what an incredible experience. And each person as a military member, veteran, first responder, most that I've met, one word that would come to mind is selfless. And as you two were chatting, you each kind of disclosed a little bit that you were at a raw place at that time where you kind of mutually came together. And you were still selfless and being vulnerable and talking about your trauma and what you struggled with and struggle with in hopes of kind of paying it forward and helping each other. It sounded like as part of that journey and that recovery, but then reaching out and helping others in that recovery. And as you said, that validation piece. So yeah, maybe to explore that a little bit more, Emily, like I wanted to ask you, is the work that you do, the advocacy, what's your 20 social media, those types of things, does that help you, continue to help you in your own personal journey while you're helping others?
Yes, unequivocally yes. Because PTSD or occupational stress injury, we know that it does not go away. Our brains are changed. We are changed as a person. We can learn to manage it. We can get better. We can heal. But we are susceptible to traumatic events and how we respond to them still. So as I do these things and I put out the podcast and I meet people, I still go through my day-to-day challenges. Like I told you, this week was an absolute shit show. I don't know if you're allowed to swear, but this week for me was a shit show. It came at me from all angles. And I had to take a step back and like an ostrich, put my head in the sand. The difference is me isolating out of fear for months at a time now is me taking a step back for quiet reflection, self-care, knowing how to handle and manage how the tremors are in my body, and now knowing I'm going to come out of it. I know I'm going to come out of it, and it doesn't last months anymore. It's been days. Here I am doing a podcast now. And that's the other thing that people need to understand is that, yes, once we do enter recovery or earn recovery, there will still be challenges, but it doesn't mean you've made a step back. And it doesn't mean that you're losing ground. It just means you're human and you're normal. So that this has to be something that is common knowledge, which isn't common knowledge. This isn't common knowledge that people think that when you take a step back or you struggle with something or a challenge, that you are now faltering somehow. And in fact, you're not. You're not faltering. You're just having to just take a step back and acknowledge and recognize and feel and be present to go, this is a hard week. It's affecting me in a way that I may not enjoy, but I need to acknowledge it. I'm going to take the time it needs to get through it, and I'll come back out in a couple of days. And that's what healing and recovery is all about. And if we allowed ourselves that grace, and I don't mean just the people going through it, but those of our loved ones, our colleagues who haven't been through PTSD, have a little bit of grace for understanding or just allowing their coworkers or their loved ones to be who they need to be with an occupational stress injury or PTSD.
Emily, I'm going to bring up another S word, and that is, that concept of stigma, because you bring up this point of, you didn't use this word, but a transition between allowing the injury to overcome and take us versus finding a reason, a purpose. You talk about your why. Does stigma play a role in getting there faster?
In what way? What do you mean, does stigma play a role in getting there faster?
So as an individual who is experiencing this, you have a PTSI, an OSI, there are steps that are taken before we can acknowledge within ourselves that we are injured and that we need to get better. And is there a role of stigma in our lives that prohibits us from, reaching those goals faster?
Oh, absolutely. And there's two forms of stigma. There's the stigma from the exterior, and that's what we absolutely fear from our coworkers, our loved ones, our family, our friends. And from that stigma, then we shut our mouths, we hide, we pretend like nothing's happening. And so that we keep going and we keep suppressing all the trauma and all the issues and not feeling. So that hinders us and delays us. But then there's the self-stigma. And that's the second one. And actually, dare I say that that's the worst. And the self-stigma that I had was the language that I would use against myself. I would use words as weapons against myself. You're broken, you're damaged, you're fucked up, you're worthless. You're no good at any of this. You shouldn't be here. You'd be better if you were gone. The people that you've left behind would be better. Yeah, that self-stigma, it derails us. It takes us right off of any healing path. And we have to change that narrative for ourselves, or else we don't get out of it. And as we get stronger and change that narrative for ourselves, what the naysayers and the outside stigma and the external stigma says doesn't seem to matter anymore. And that's another beauty of healing, right? But yes, it derails us and it prohibits healing in such a major way.
How much does the purpose of What You're 20 lend to that process of healing for you?
Purpose is everything. It's absolutely everything, particularly as a person who gives themselves to service. Whether you're a first responder, military, veteran, retired, particularly retired, people who go off work. Whenever we are on work and we have a purpose. We have a reason to get up every day. We're going in and we're serving. We're serving people. We're serving our country. We're serving our families. We feel like we are needed, and we feel like we're doing something with our lives that is meaningful. Now, when we go off ill with our injury, or when we retire and we haven't sought any help, all of a sudden that purpose is taken from us. And when we don't have that purpose, we don't have that reason to get up in the morning.
I find the processes involved, having gone through the medical release process through the Canadian Armed Forces, as well as the WSIB process in Ontario. It's not encouraging of healing. It's not encouraging of continuing purpose, because there's this, again, attached to stigma and this fallacy that if I go and do something, if I go volunteer, if I find that minor purpose, that I obviously should be able to return to full pre-injury duties. And it's often frowned upon, and people hide it. And, my involvement in my own organization, and I know with yours, at the beginning, it was a big hide and seek game, because we knew that this was providing us our purpose and driving us to post-traumatic growth. But it was also could become a thorn in our side when it comes to our wellness.
Mm-hmm.
It was a treatment for our injury, but not supported by the larger organizations.
And it's hard to express that, or quantify it in a way that makes sense on what you're getting back and how it contributes to your post-traumatic growth, and probably is the antidote, I guess, to that self-stigmatization, when you can find that you have purpose and you're helping others and kind of regaining some of that, that you experienced within your careers. So, yeah.
And so much so for veterans and first responders, as Emily said.
Take, for example, a first responder who's been off with their injury, and they have found the courage and the healing and the fortitude to come back to work. Now, a lot of people will, with the stigma, go, look who's coming back. Oh, nice they had the summer off or something like that. The power, the courage, and the energy it takes to hold your head up and to walk back into an office after you've been off with an occupational stress injury is bar none. That person's the strongest one. That person has strength. So for them to come in, but they most likely have restrictions because that injury sometimes is a permanent injury and you cannot go back to pre-injury work. So you come back to the job, you are being stigmatized, you cannot go back to your pre-injury work, and you end up getting put in a broom closet size of a room and tapping keys. Now, when you have this large, I'm going to take for an example, a large 6'4" strapping man who used to be on the tactical team and would run when those bells and whistles rang, and they put their bodies up against everything, and now you've got them tapping keys in a basement. And you tell me why that they don't see that there's no purpose for that individual in that room. That person's depression gets deeper, their self-worth becomes farther down, and there is more suicidal ideation when back to work with no purpose than there is when they're off. And I can state that as firsthand knowledge because I don't need a reason to stay in bed. My depression and my injury gave that to me already. Every day I've got a reason to stay in bed. It's my injury. I need a reason to get out of that bed every day, and that is purposeful work. So when you have that strapping lad who used to go and do everything, he needs a purpose at the end of the day, not a broom closet in the basement tapping keys. So what can we do for these individuals who are strong enough to come back to work after their injury? Why don't you put them on the wellness team? Why don't you actually utilize their now experience as a strength and get them to motivate others or to show them the way? Because I'm telling you right now, the people in command and in white shirts are not the ones to lead the way. I'm not going to ask any of them to tell me how to get there when they've never been there themselves. So the individuals who lead the way are the ones who have been there. And nobody is capitalizing on this beautiful experience of these human beings that are coming back from the brink. So that's purpose right there. You need purposeful work. So when we are sitting at home in bed doing nothing and we have this drive to get up and spread the word and help people, yeah, that's turning pain into purpose. So what's your 20? To speak out and say what's real. And that's the other thing. How much do we live in fear? All of us live in fear or reprisal from opening our mouths, whether from our supervisors, from friends, from family for that judgment. I don't know where the switch happened, Laryssa, but I don't give a shit about what anybody thinks about me anymore. And I don't fear anything. What is there to fear? I was ready to take my own life. I've had my supervisors ignore me. I am transitioning out of a 25-year career. What is there to fear? Everything there was to fear, I actually ended up entering into it and realizing once fear knocked on the door and I opened the door, nobody's there.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a couple threads I want to pull on there. And you kind of talk about that switch. So I don't want to ask two questions at once. I think I'm notorious for doing that.
That's okay.
One of them, I love that we're kind of delving into that sense of purpose, and I will have some curiosity in a bit to talk about the sense of purpose when it might not be related directly to one's work. If they aren't able to return to work, they might find a sense of purpose in other ways. You as a mother, you disclosed Emily. The other thing that I want to talk about, though, that switch, and you did say like at a certain point in time you had to accept where you were with your trauma. Some folks I observe in any circumstance in life, but it can be related to mental health, experience a victim mentality or a victim experience. And it sounds like for you, there was a switch that you empowered yourself, that you might have switched from that experience of feeling victimized because of what happened to you. But then you have to make that switch to turn that pain into purpose. So do you want to talk about that a little bit? Does that relate to you when I talk about having that kind of victim mentality or experience?
Yeah, I think that all of us do at some point, and I think it's also okay to have it. A lot of people will say, no, don't be the victim, but we have to honor everything that we're going through at a particular time, and honoring it is just acknowledging it. So for me, I had so much anger, so much rage against my organization because I was like, you did this to me, or I was, where are you? Why aren't you coming for me? Why aren't you bringing me back into the fold? Like, why I've been off for this long and nobody has called. Why do you ignore me? Why don't I exist anymore? Why am I just a number to you? And I was searching so much for them to show up, and they weren't coming, and they still haven't. And so what I needed to do was wallow in that pain. And it's okay to wallow for a little bit. You just can't stay there. So I did my wallow and I went, okay, They're not coming. Okay, you are injured because of your work. Okay, there's all these things. Your brain has changed now and your life is changing. So do you want to stay here or do you want to get up and do something about it? And it's like, well, I don't want to stay here because this isn't serving anybody, particularly my child, who I told you was my why. And so once I started to get up and start being who he needed, as I put one foot in front of the other and became that individual that he needed, I started becoming the individual that I actually needed. And then I advocated for myself for my treatment. I advocated for myself for the podcast. I advocated for myself when it came to speaking out about the injury and the stigma that people actually face. And what it is the knowledge and the education that we're really normal, and that every single one of us who has this injury, we're actually not the broken ones. We're not broken. Our brains are acting and reacting biologically correct. And so if people knew that, wow, what a game changer. Oh my God, there actually isn't something wrong with me. I was injured. And therefore my injury is causing this response, which is normal. We wouldn't call ourselves broken or an idiot if we had a broken knee or ankle or a torn meniscus and then we moved it and it hurt. You would go, oh, no, it's broken. It hurts because I moved it. So therefore I must do what it takes to rest it and heal it. Why don't we respond the same way to an injury in the brain?
What role did your family play? You've talked about your son a number of times, referenced him, but what role did your family play? And maybe how are they impacted by the duration of your recovery? It sounds like it was quite a process.
When it comes to the role that my family played, I think they would have liked to have played a greater role, particularly my spouse. But I didn't allow them in. I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to let my spouse in or to carry that for me because I was too embarrassed, too ashamed, too in-depth in my suicide ideation. So it really took a strain on my marriage, and I did not know how to work on myself and my marriage at the same time. So unfortunately, I am one of those statistical families where it's really hard for the spouses. It's really hard. When it comes to my children and family and how it affected them, well, I wasn't the best mom for a period of time. And I was angry or I was absent, meaning I was sleeping or just trying to hide my depression and grief. So that is a really hard one to come back from. And it's something that I used to be terribly ashamed of. But to be ashamed does not heal or help anyone. And so you have to uncover the shame and tell the truth so that we can make repair, improve, and move forward. And so the way that my family then became a part of my healing is that I wasn't enough to save myself. My spouse wasn't enough for me to stick around. I was prepared to do that final ending. And it was my child that was what was enough. I had already caused so much damage to my family, and particularly my child, that I did know if I took that final act, the damage that I was doing was going to be irreparable. So I had to find a way to get up, get my ass out of bed, and be the person he needed, even when I felt nothing like it. I felt nothing like it, but there was food on the table. There was him getting off to school. There was hugs at night. And then whenever he would go on the bus, I would crawl back into bed and I would stay there until that bus came back. So I did what I needed for a little person because they deserved it. They needed it. And it was that child who, as I said, was my anchor, who helped pull me out of my grief and out of the depth of my depression until I was able to stand on my own 2 feet and want to be that person for myself. So family plays a large part. It plays a large part. Ooh, that's a lot of weight for a little person to carry. That's a lot of weight for a little person to carry. But I can tell you I'm a great mama now. I'm awesome. And I actually am enjoying it.
It sounds like you were a great mom then, and I wonder if he didn't carry that weight. And I'm so curious to hear once he's grown. And I'm sure you're very open about. Now I'm getting emotional. I'm sure you're very open about your journey, about your experience, about mental health. So you're, no doubt, raising a remarkable young man. And once he is old enough, in retrospective, I would love to be a fly on the wall for that conversation.
He is a part of the healing journey because we think that just PTSD or occupational stress injury is just our story. And in fact, no, it's the story of everybody around us. It affects every single person. So my injury was my child's injury. My injury was my spouse's injury. So the healing parts of my story has to be a part of his story too. So he has to see his mother heal. He has to see his mother save herself, that she is strong enough to come out and be who he needs. And to this day, he's my biggest fan. He reps my gear. And then I went to pull in and go get gas. It's a beautiful story. And there's a police cruiser in front of us. It's evening. He opens the door. And I'm like, where are you going? He goes, I'm going to go talk to the police officer. And I always teach my son that police officers are safe. They're not angry. They're not the bad guys. They're the good guys. So go ahead. So I'm like, okay. Meanwhile, I'm a little nervous because I'm just like, I don't know what he's going to say. And he walked out and he cuts back in the car and I go, so what did you say? And he goes, I told him that my mom has this podcast. It's really great about mental health and he should go listen to it. Like, I just reached over and squeezed this little human. And I was like, thank you. Thank God. God knew what he was doing when he blessed me with that child.
He's not only your son, he's your agent. So
yeah, he is.
Some of the most amazing people I have met are injured due to trauma. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to call it a superpower because that's kind of weird, but if it is embraced by organizations, if members who are off were given priority to still be made felt like part of the team, if once they arrived, they were included in their return to work plans appropriately based on what they felt they could do and not, because you mentioned wellness. I offered multiple times to be a wellness officer and it was never, ever monopolized on.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they want us in the building. I don't know if the attitudes are that like they are mine, that I really believe and truly believe that if people with this injury are nurtured properly, they will be some of the best leaders the organization could ever have the opportunity to be led by, because they're doing it from a lens of understanding, empathy, and they're trauma informed. And therefore people will get behind them because they know that they will have their best interests in mind. But back to this purpose, Emily, and you and I, it's a bit of a small community what we do. Yeah, I'm glad that we're able to be loud, but it's not what every first responder or veteran is going to take up as their purpose. I'm blessed that this is mine, but I also have so many other friends that do so many other things that are purpose that are injured for this. And what's your experience with What You're 20 and all the different people? Because you interview people with purpose and they are all from different walks of life.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because part of the healing journey for me, the purpose in the beginning wasn't the podcast. I had no clue I wanted to do a podcast. I had no clue I was going to end up here. What I started with was power tools and building a farm. So I went out and it basically, purpose starts with creativity. And creativity is what starts the brain firing again. That you go, oh, I want to do this. Oh, let's get outside and can't wait to see what stall I'm going to make. Or what can I build tomorrow? That's how my journey started, was creativity. I know people can't see very well, but on the back of my wall, there's paintings. That was another thing of creativity for me, that it allowed me to get up and I can't wait to see the finished product of this. So with purpose can be anything that triggers that creativity in you, that makes you feel that you're contributing to something meaningful. Me building stalls on a farm was meaningful. Me painting was meaningful to me because there's a message in the painting that makes me feel something. And so I have other members that I know. One of them makes knives. That's his purpose. Yeah. And they're gorgeous knives. There's another individual that's a friend of mine that he does golfing. There's another person, like there's so much that you can do, but that's the thing. It's not about recreating what another person is doing. It's about listening to what it is inside of yourself that's driving creativity. That is the message that you're supposed to listen to and then build upon to go and find what is the purpose that makes you want to keep getting up every day.
How difficult is that, though, when you come from, especially those that will be listening to us, from organizations that dictate your purpose? I know for me, when I came out of it, I still haven't figured out who Andrew is.
That's beautiful, because, and I don't know if you did the same, but if you ask a first responder or a military member, who are you? The response that you get is, I'm this rank at this organization. I'm Sergeant Gough at the London Police Service, or I'm That's who you are. That's your identity. That's all you know. And your life is built around that. Your time with your children, your work doesn't bend to your children. You bend your time for your work, right? Like you're like, no, my kids will have to wait. I got shift. My wife and my dates will have to wait. I've got shift. My friends, any creativity will have to wait. I've got shift. That's your identity. So of course it's built around that. And you jump, stand, and deliver when they say. That's the duty. That's the loyalty to our organization. That's the character of a first responder. That's the character of a military member. That's the character of an alpha class individual. We jump when we're told because it's duty and it's loyalty and it's what we know. However, when you go and you switch it and a doctor is sitting there and saying, so what do you like to do? Deer in headlights. What? I'm sorry. Is there something I'm supposed to be doing other than work? Is there something else other than... No, I couldn't tell you who I was either, Andrew. I couldn't tell you in any way other than I was a first responder. But now, and yes, I am a mother and I can say that, but I mean, who am I intrinsically inside? Well, I can tell you I'm a deeply caring, compassionate person. And I wouldn't have said that to you before because I would have been a little embarrassed to tell you that I care. Because
I was going to say,
yeah.
I think it takes some courage to ask yourself those questions and to explore that. It takes some courage to push yourself outside your comfort zone, whether it's exploring creativity or exploring your purpose or reestablishing another facet of your identity. So yeah, I think, like I said, it would take some courage to be able to do that. I have one more question, because I think we're actually coming closer to the end of our time already. This is not our first conversation. I know we were on a Zoom call the other night, and that hour went by just as quickly as this one did. Maybe I would like to ask kind of both of you this question. Given the fact that each of you, our theme today is kind of turning pain into purpose, and the experiences of your trauma is kind of what brought you here, I think. And so I'd like to ask each one of you, maybe I'll start with you, Andrew. Would you change anything?
I am a better human being. I am a better man. I am a better husband. I am a better father because of what happened to me. Because of the decisions I made to choose my family over my career. We talked about stigma earlier. It is very real. All those things that people decide not to do out of fear, I'm sorry to say, but they did. They happened to me. All those things that I feared. So when Emily says, what is there left to fear? Nothing, because it already happened. Right? I'm no longer a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, and I'm no longer a member of my police service, and that is against my will. So I am glad and I am blessed to have chosen and made the decisions that I did, and I do not regret a single thing about it. And I have met some amazing people on this journey, and lifelong friends and people that I would do anything for.
Thank you. Emily, same question. Would you change anything?
First, just quickly, briefly, that Andrew, when you said it was against your will, I felt that on such a level, because when we leave our services, it's like an amputation, and nobody wants to have a part of you amputated. We wanted to be there to the end. So I appreciate you saying that, and I feel that so deeply. Now, as for would I change anything, it's a twofold. The thing with Andrew had said that the most amazing connections have been made because of this. The other thing is that because my injury reached its peak and reared its head, I was able to get well. If it hadn't, I would have stayed a very angry, robotic, cold individual. And that's no way to live. That's no way to live your life, being angry with yourself and being angry with the world. However, if I could have changed something, I think I would have preferred my injury reared its head a lot sooner. And the reason being is that it took a lot of my life from me. It took a lot of years from me, and who I didn't get to be. And the recovery time, it does take a long time, but it is worth it. And I'm still grieving the loss of that person and those events and those things. So the only thing that I would change is if somehow it could have come sooner. But no, everything, I have gratitude to wake up and say, thank you for giving this to me, for letting this happen. Because things don't happen to us, Laryssa. They happen for us. It's up to us to see, how is this happening for me? all my injuries happening for me because clearly I need to heal and become a better person. Like Andrew said, I'm a better mother. I'm a better human being. I'm kinder. I care. I open doors. I talk to people. I had such a misanthropy and a hate for humans because all I ever heard was the worst in them every day at my work. And now I actually genuinely care. I genuinely care to the nth of my being. And I think that's a beautiful thing to have because we need more people like that.
Incredible. Thank you both. What I didn't hear either one of you say is I wish I was never injured. So just thank you both. Emily, thank you so much for joining the podcast today and for your insights and sharing part of your journey with us. Andrew, thank you so much again for being willing. You step up to help us out all the time. And when I approached you to ask at a pretty short notice, actually, if you would be co-host for Mind Beyond the Mission to give us a veteran perspective, you did not hesitate at all and stepped up. And we just so appreciate that and love your insights and perspectives that you have to give.
I believe in everything that Atlas is doing. And, the family side of the veteran life is often forgotten, and it is time to make families heard, and you guys are doing that. I will be here all day, every day, all the time for you guys.
And thank you, Laryssa. I love our conversations, and it's beautiful to have one more person who's in my camp.
Thank you so much.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Mind Beyond the Mission.
If this conversation resonated with you or helped you in any way, I encourage you to subscribe to Mind Beyond the Mission wherever you listen to your podcasts, so you'll be the first to know when our next episode comes out.
And if you know someone who might relate to what we've shared or could find it helpful, please feel free to send it their way. We're all on the same team.
Plus, we'd love to hear what other topics you'd be interested in us exploring in future episodes. Brian and I have a lot of ideas and subjects we plan to dive into, but you, the listener, have probably experienced or thought of topics that haven't crossed our minds yet.
Please reach out if this is the case. We're on social media at Atlas Veterans CA on most platforms, so please feel free to tweet at us, send us a message, or leave a review on this episode, and let us know what else you'd like to hear us talk about.
Brian, it's always a pleasure having these important conversations with you. Looking forward to next time.
You bet, Laryssa. Take it easy.